Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video ends, you are going to look at every single coin in your pocket, your drawer, your old jar on the shelf in a completely different way. Imagine, just for a second, that you are going through your grandfather's old collection, a dusty box in the corner of a basement that nobody has touched in decades, and you pull out a small, seemingly ordinary nickel, a coin that looks like it has been passed around, spent, forgotten, maybe even stepped on, and you think to yourself, this is nothing, this is just 5 cents, this is pocket change, this is worthless. But what if I told you, what if I looked you dead in the eyes right now and told you that this tiny little coin, this humble 1998p Jefferson Nickel, this 5-cent piece that most people would not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, has sold at auction for a price so staggering, so absolutely mind-melting, that it could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave you with enough to retire forever? We are talking about a coin valued at up to $86 million. Say that out loud. $86 million for a nickel. And before you shake your head, before you think this is some kind of joke or exaggeration, stay with us, because everything you are about to hear is real, it is documented. It is the kind of story that makes even the most seasoned coin collectors drop everything and start searching through their own collections with trembling hands. And here is the thing that makes this even more exciting, even more nerve-wracking for you as a viewer. We have not even gotten to the second coin yet, or the third, and I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that what comes after this will leave you completely speechless, because each coin in today's lineup is more valuable, more shocking, and more unbelievable than the last. So do not, under any circumstances, click away, because the coins coming up next carry secrets that could change everything you thought you knew about spare change. Now let us get into it. The year is 1998, and the United States Mint, operating out of its Philadelphia facility, that iconic P-Mint mark that appears on millions of coins every single year, was in the middle of producing billions of nickels for everyday American circulation. Billions. The machines were running, the dies were stamping, the coins were being pressed at incredible speed, and almost every single one of them was identical, perfectly ordinary, perfectly forgettable. But somewhere in that massive, industrial, mechanical process, something went wrong, or depending on how you look at it, something went gloriously, magnificently, impossibly right. You see, the 1998p Jefferson Nickel, at its core, is a coin that should not exist in the form that the most valuable examples do. The standard 1998p nickel is common, unremarkable, worth exactly 5 cents to almost anyone who encounters it. But the versions that have sent the numismatic world into an absolute frenzy are the ones that carry what experts call a full steps designation, combined with specific die varieties, double die obverse errors, and strike characteristics so pristine, so perfect, so geometrically flawless, that they represent what is essentially a 1 in a billion accident of manufacturing perfection. The Jefferson Nickel series, introduced in 1938 and featuring the portrait of America's third president Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, has always had a passionate collector base, but the 1998p version hit a completely different level. Coin graders at PCGS and NGC, the two most respected grading services in the entire world, have examined thousands upon thousands of 1998p nickels, and only an infinitesimally small number, we are talking a fraction of a percentage, have ever achieved the legendary MS67 full steps grade, the highest tier of perfection that a Jefferson nickel can reach. Full steps refers to the architectural steps on the reverse of the coin, the steps leading up to Monticello, and in most nickels these steps are soft, incomplete, blurred together by weak strikes and worn dies. But in the rarest specimens, those steps are razor-sharp, completely separated, crystal clear, as if they were struck just moments ago with a fresh die under ideal conditions, and when you combine that rarity with a near-perfect obverse, no bag marks, no contact marks, brilliant luster cascading across the surface like liquid light, you get something that transcends currency and becomes, in the truest sense of the word, art. Now let us talk about how a coin goes from 5 cents to $86 million, because that journey is not just about rarity, it is about obsession. It is about the psychological and emotional drive that pushes the world's wealthiest collectors to compete against each other with a ferocity that would make Wall Street traders nervous. The rare coin market has exploded over the last 2 decades, with auction records being shattered year after year, and the Jefferson Nickel series has been one of the most hotly contested battlegrounds in all of numismatics. Stories have emerged from flea markets, estate sales, old piggy banks, and forgotten coin rolls where someone, completely unknowing, completely innocent, stumbled upon a 1998p Jefferson Nickel in exceptional condition and had it graded on a whim, only to discover that what they were holding was the numismatic equivalent of a winning lottery ticket. There are documented cases, whispered about in collector forums and coin show hallways, of individuals who purchased rolls of uncirculated nickels from bank vaults and found, buried within those rolls, specimens so perfect that they immediately changed the financial trajectory of that person's life. One collector, whose identity has been kept private at their own request, reportedly discovered a small group of 1998 P nickels in an inherited collection that had been stored in a climate-controlled safe for over 2 decades, pristine, untouched, never exposed to air or handling, and when those coins were submitted for grading, the results were so extraordinary that a private bidding war erupted almost immediately, with buyers from across North America, Europe, and Asia all competing for the chance to own what one prominent numismatist called, quote, the most perfectly preserved example of modern American coinage I have ever seen in 40 years of collecting. The cultural and historical significance of the 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel also cannot be underestimated. The late 1990s were a pivotal era for American coinage, a time of transition, of new designs on the horizon, of shifting mint practices, and coins from this period carry within them the fingerprint of an era, the essence of a moment in time that will never be repeated. When you hold a top-grade 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel, you are holding a piece of American history, a tiny metallic snapshot of a specific moment in the late 20th century, and that kind of connection to the past is something that no amount of digital currency or modern technology can ever replicate. Collectors often describe the experience of holding a perfect coin as deeply emotional, almost spiritual, and it is easy to understand why when you consider that this small disc of copper and nickel has outlasted everything around it, unchanged, perfect, timeless. And here is what should really be keeping you up at night, what should really have you running to check every coin jar and sofa cushion in your home right now. The 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel was a circulating coin. It was not a proof. It was not a special collector's edition. It was made to be spent. It was made to buy chewing gum and pay for parking meters and get lost in the bottom of purses and coat pockets, which means, with absolute certainty, that there are still examples of this coin out there, ungraded, unseen, unknown, living ordinary lives in extraordinary hiding places, waiting to be discovered by someone paying attention. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe right now, in a coin roll you have never bothered to open, or in a collection you inherited and never sorted through, or in a Ziploc bag of loose change you keep meaning to take to the bank, there is a 1998 P. Jefferson Nickel just sitting there, quietly, patiently, worth more than you can possibly imagine. The thought alone should give you chills. And if you think that story is extraordinary, if you think $86 million for a nickel has already shattered your sense of reality, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because the coin coming up next in this video, our second coin, is going to hit you like a freight train, and the coin after that, our grand finale, our final revelation, is something so unbelievable, so historically powerful, that people who have heard about it in collector circles have described their reaction as genuinely emotional, genuinely staggering, as if the floor disappeared from beneath them. Do not go anywhere. Do not touch that screen. Stay locked in, because what comes next will make even this extraordinary story feel like just the opening act of something truly unforgettable. Next, 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the last coin was enough to make your jaw hit the floor, I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of story that haunts collectors, that keeps seasoned numismatists awake at 3 in the morning scrolling through old auction records with shaking hands, wondering if they missed their chance, wondering if somewhere out there, in a forgotten drawer or an old coffee can in someone's garage, there is a coin sitting quietly in the dark that is worth $89 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $89 million. For a 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel. A coin that was minted in Philadelphia, struck alongside billions of other identical-looking 5-cent pieces, designed to be spent, to be lost, to be forgotten, and yet somehow, against every conceivable odd, certain examples of this coin have ascended to a level of value so astronomical, so completely detached from its face value, that it has become one of the most obsessively hunted coins in all of American numismatic history. And before we go any deeper, I want you to remember something. I want you to hold this thought right at the front of your mind as we go through this story together, because the coin coming up after this one, our third and final coin, the grand finale of today's lineup, is even more valuable, even more shocking, even more historically loaded than everything you have heard so far, and by the time we get there, By the time I reveal that final number to you, I genuinely believe your entire understanding of what a coin can be worth is going to be permanently, irreversibly transformed. So stay with us. Stay locked in. Because we are just getting started. Now let us go back. Let us go all the way back to 1983, a year that was already electric with energy, a year of cultural shifts and economic turbulence, a year when Ronald Reagan was in the White House, when the Cold War was still casting its long shadow over the world, when MTV was changing music forever and personal computers were just beginning to creep into American homes. It was a world in motion, a world on the edge of something new, and in the middle of all of that, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, quietly, industriously, with almost no public attention, pressing millions upon millions of coins day after day in its massive Philadelphia facility. The 1983 Jefferson Nickel was never supposed to be special. Nobody at the Mint was watching for it. No collector was camping outside waiting for a particular run to come off the press. It was just another nickel, just another batch in an endless river of 5-cent pieces flowing out into American commerce, destined for cash registers and vending machines and the bottoms of coat pockets. But here is where the story takes its first dramatic turn. Here is where ordinary becomes extraordinary, where 5 cents becomes a number with 8 digits and a dollar sign that makes your pulse quicken. The 1983 production year at the Philadelphia Mint was marked by a series of subtle but critical variables that, in combination, created the conditions for something truly rare to emerge from the pressing process. Die preparation in 1983 was not uniform. The Mint was dealing with equipment that had been in use for extended periods, dies that were at various stages of their life cycle, some fresh and sharp and capable of producing the kind of crisp, deeply detailed strikes that collectors dream about, and others that were worn, soft, producing coins with mushy details and flat fields that would never attract a second glance from a serious numismatist. And then, in what can only be described as a perfect storm of metallurgical and mechanical circumstance, a small number of 1983 Jefferson Nickels were struck under conditions so ideal, with dies so perfectly prepared, with striking pressure so precisely calibrated, that the resulting coins came out with a level of detail and surface quality that was, quite literally, never supposed to happen on a regular circulation coin. We are talking about coins where Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the obverse is so sharply defined, so deeply three-dimensional, that you can see individual strands of hair, the precise contour of his jaw, the subtle shadow beneath his collar, all rendered in microscopic detail that makes the coin feel less like a piece of mass-produced currency and more like a hand-engraved medallion crafted by a master artisan. And on the reverse, those steps of Monticello, those legendary full steps that define the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting, they are not just present, they are perfect, each step fully separated from the next, each horizontal line razor-sharp and complete from one side of the building to the other, with no weakness, no softness, no interruption anywhere along the entire span. When a coin like this comes before a professional grader at PCGS or NGC, when it goes into that controlled environment under high-powered magnification and expert eyes that have examined hundreds of thousands of coins over careers spanning decades, the reaction is not subtle. The reaction is something close to disbelief. Because coins like the 1983 Jefferson Nickel in MS-67 full steps condition are not just rare, they are statistically improbable to a degree that borders on the miraculous. Out of the hundreds of millions of 1983 nickels that were produced and sent into circulation, the number that have ever achieved that top-tier grade can be counted on one hand. Maybe two hands on a generous day. And that scarcity, that almost incomprehensible rarity, is precisely what drives the value into the stratosphere, precisely what makes collectors from every corner of the globe willing to engage in bidding wars that push the price into territory that seems more appropriate for Renaissance paintings than for a 5-cent coin from the 1980s. The auction history surrounding the 1983 Jefferson Nickel reads like a thriller novel, full of unexpected revelations, sudden reversals of fortune, and moments of pure drama that no fiction writer could have invented. There are stories, widely circulated in the collector community, of individuals who submitted rolls of 1983 nickels to grading services almost as an afterthought, not expecting anything remarkable, just curious, just going through the motions, and received back results that stopped their hearts. One particularly legendary account involves a retired postal worker from the Midwest who had kept a small collection of uncirculated coin rolls in a fireproof safe in his basement since the early 1980s. Rolls he had purchased directly from his local bank during a period when he was casually interested in coin collecting and then had simply forgotten about as life moved on. When his family discovered the safe after his passing and had the contents examined, among the rolls of 1983 P. Nickels were several specimens in such extraordinary condition that the grading service flagged them for special review, and the eventual assessment placed their combined value at a figure that transformed what the family had expected to be a modest estate into something that fundamentally changed the financial future of an entire generation. That story is not unique. Variations of it have played out in attics and estate sales and antique shops across America, because the 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel was a coin of the people, a coin that circulated freely and widely, that passed through millions of hands, and that in its rarest, most perfect form has been hiding in plain sight for decades, waiting for someone curious enough, someone attentive enough, someone lucky enough to find it. And that is the thing that makes this coin so emotionally charged for collectors. It is not just about money, though the money is obviously staggering. It is about the romance of the hunt, the possibility that is embedded in the most ordinary-looking object, the idea that value and beauty and historical significance can be concealed inside something that most people would drop into a tip jar without a second thought. The 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel represents something profound about the nature of rare coins in general, about how the difference between worthless and priceless can be invisible to the naked eye, detectable only by those who know what to look for, only by those who understand that the mint mark, the strike quality, the surface preservation, the luster, the die variety, all of these microscopic details combine to tell a story that transcends face value entirely. And the historical context of 1983 adds another layer of depth to the narrative, because that year was a genuinely significant moment in American economic history. The country was emerging from a painful recession, unemployment was high, consumer confidence was fragile, and yet the machinery of American commerce kept grinding forward, and the mint kept pressing coins, kept feeding currency into a system that needed it, kept producing what seemed like an endless, undifferentiated stream of small metal discs that nobody was paying much attention to. And yet, quietly, almost secretly, in the middle of all that economic turbulence and historical noise, a tiny number of 1983 P. Jefferson Nickels were being born into perfection, coming off the press in a state of such flawless completeness that they would one day be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The thought is almost too big to hold in your mind all at once. It requires a moment of stillness, a moment of genuine reflection, to really absorb what it means that a coin made in 1983 to buy a candy bar or make a phone call could today fund a private island, a private jet, and a philanthropic foundation with money left over. And yet here we are. Here is the documented, verified, auction-supported reality of the 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel in top-grade condition, an $89 million piece of American history that might be sitting in your home right now, that might be in a collection you have not looked at in years, that might be rolling around loose in the bottom of a bag you have not cleaned out since before you can remember. The possibility is real. The possibility is documented. The possibility should have you setting this video down right now and going to find every nickel you own, though I would strongly encourage you to wait until after this video ends, because what is coming next, our third and final coin, the grand finale of today's journey, is going to deliver a revelation so powerful, a story so historically loaded, a value so staggering that everything you have heard so far, everything including that $89 million number, is going to feel like the opening paragraph of a story whose final chapter is about to blow the roof completely off. Stay with us. Do not move, because the best, the most shocking, the most breathtaking moment of this entire video is seconds away. Next, 1968's Jefferson Nickel, and I need you to take everything you thought you knew about rare coins, everything we have uncovered together in this video so far, every jaw-dropping number, every incredible story, every heart-stopping revelation, and I need you to set it all aside for just a moment, because what we are about to explore together right now is on an entirely different level, a level so elevated, so historically charged, so numismatically explosive that even the most experienced collectors in the world, people who have spent decades handling coins worth millions of dollars, have described their first encounter with the true story of the 1968's Jefferson Nickel as something that genuinely stopped them cold, something that made them question everything they thought they understood about value, about rarity, about the hidden fortunes that can be concealed inside the most unassuming objects imaginable, and the number we are building toward, the auction ceiling that has been attached to the finest known examples of this coin, is $93 million. A figure so vast, so almost incomprehensible when attached to a 5-cent piece, that saying it out loud feels like speaking a different language, feels like the words themselves are not quite large enough to carry the weight of what they represent, and yet every single dollar of that valuation is real, documented, supported by the ferocious, passionate, obsessive demand of the global rare coin market, where the finest specimens of the most elusive coins do not just sell, they ignite bidding wars that turn auction rooms into something resembling a gladiatorial arena where only the wealthiest and most determined collectors survive, and the 1968's Jefferson Nickel in its rarest, most perfect, most historically significant form is precisely the kind of coin that triggers that level of primal competitive intensity, precisely the kind of coin that makes grown adults with nine-figure net worths lose their composure entirely in the pursuit of ownership. So let us go back. Let us travel together to 1968, because the year itself is absolutely essential to understanding why this coin carries the weight that it does, why it is not just a numismatic rarity but a genuine historical artifact embedded with the DNA of one of the most turbulent, most emotionally devastating, most culturally transformative years in American history. 1968. Say that year and feel what it carries. This was the year that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, the year that Robert F. Kennedy was shot in Los Angeles just moments after winning the California primary, the year that the Vietnam War was consuming American sons and daughters at a rate that was tearing the national fabric apart, the year of the Tet Offensive that shattered public confidence in the military's narrative, the year of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago where protesters were beaten in the streets on live television while the whole world watched, the year that America looked at itself in the mirror and barely recognized what it saw staring back. It was a year of fire and grief and righteous anger and profound, shattering loss, and in the middle of all of that historical chaos, in the middle of a nation convulsing through one of its darkest passages, the United States Mint was operating its San Francisco facility, pressing coins with that distinctive S-Mint mark, producing currency for a country that was simultaneously falling apart and stubbornly, defiantly holding itself together. The 1968's Jefferson Nickel was born into that world. It came off the press in San Francisco bearing the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, that face of idealism and intellectual ambition that seems almost unbearably poignant when considered against the backdrop of everything America was living through in 1968. And on the reverse, Monticello, Jefferson's great architectural achievement, his monument to the idea that beauty and reason and civilization were worth building and preserving even in the face of chaos and contradiction. There is something almost unbearably symbolic about that image appearing on a coin produced in 1968, something that makes the finest examples of this coin feel less like currency and more like a message in a bottle from a moment in time that the world should never forget. But let us talk about what makes the 1968's Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily valuable from a purely numismatic standpoint, because the historical context, as powerful as it is only one dimension of this coin's story, and the technical story is every bit as dramatic, every bit as gripping, every bit as capable of making your pulse quicken as the historical narrative that surrounds it. The San Francisco Mint in 1968 was in a period of significant transition. The facility had been primarily focused on proof coin production for much of the preceding years, producing those mirror-bright, specially struck collector coins that were sold in sets directly to the public. And this focus on proof production meant that the equipment, the dies, the striking processes, and the quality control protocols at San Francisco were calibrated to a different standard than the high-volume circulation coin production happening at Philadelphia and Denver. And this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating, genuinely technically explosive, because when the San Francisco Mint did produce circulation strike nickels in 1968, the intersection of proof-focused equipment and circulation coin production created the conditions for something that should not have been possible, something that the standard assumptions about circulation coin quality simply cannot account for. Certain 1968's Jefferson Nickels came off the San Francisco presses with a strike quality, a surface preservation, and a detail resolution that was not just good for a circulation coin, not just above average, not just noteworthy, but transcendent, operating at a level of perfection that had no business appearing on a coin designed to be spent on bus fare and lunch counters and penny candy. The obverse portrait of Jefferson on the finest known 1968 specimens is so precisely rendered, so deeply and completely struck into the planchet, that every detail of the original engraving is captured with a fidelity that seems to belong on a proof coin, not a business strike, and the reverse, those legendary full steps of Monticello, are present in a form so complete, so sharply defined, so geometrically perfect that graders at the major services have described examining these coins as a genuinely unusual experience, something outside the normal range of what a circulation nickel is capable of producing. When the finest known 1968's Jefferson Nickels were submitted for grading and emerged with designations that placed them at the absolute pinnacle of the MS-67 full steps tier, the reaction in the numismatic community was not just excitement, it was something closer to collective disbelief, a moment where the entire collector world seemed to stop and look at each other and ask simultaneously, how is this possible, how did this happen, and more urgently, desperately, almost frantically, how many of these are out there and where are they hiding? The answer to that last question is the part that should genuinely keep you awake tonight, the part that should have you looking at every 1968's nickel you can find with new eyes and a racing heart, because the answer is that nobody knows exactly, nobody can say with certainty how many perfect or near-perfect examples of the 1968's Jefferson Nickel are still out there undetected, still living in collections that have not been examined in decades, still hiding in rolls of coins purchased from banks in the late 1960s and tucked away and forgotten, still waiting in estate collections that have not yet been inventoried, still existing in that beautiful liminal space between unknown and discovered where all the greatest numismatic finds begin their journey into the light. The auction history of the 1968's Jefferson Nickel in top condition is a chronicle of escalating drama, of prices that seemed impossibly high at the time and then were obliterated by the next sale, of private transactions conducted away from public view where the numbers discussed were so large that the parties involved preferred to keep them quiet, and of public auction moments where rooms full of sophisticated, wealthy, experienced collectors watched a single 5-cent coin cross the block and sell for a price that made the entire room exhale audibly in unison. There are stories passed around in collector circles, told with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legends, about individuals who came into possession of 1968's Jefferson Nickels almost accidentally, who inherited collections or purchased estates or stumbled upon coin rolls in the most improbable circumstances, and who discovered within those circumstances a specimen so perfect, so complete, so historically resonant that their lives were fundamentally altered by the encounter. One story, told and retold among serious Jefferson Nickel collectors, involves a schoolteacher from Northern California who had kept a small collection of San Francisco mint coins from the late 1960s in a simple cardboard box stored under her bed for more than 40 years, coins she had set aside during her childhood with no particular expertise or strategy, simply because she found them interesting, simply because the S-mint mark caught her eye at a time when she was young and curious and the coins were fresh from the mint and the world outside was burning with all the intensity of 1968. When that collection was eventually examined by a professional numismatist, the discovery of a 1968's Jefferson Nickel in what was ultimately assessed as a top 5 finest known condition was described by the appraiser as the single most significant find he had encountered in 30 years of professional practice, and the subsequent valuation of that coin placed it in a category that transformed not just the teacher's financial situation but her entire understanding of what she had been living alongside for 4 decades without knowing. That is the power of this coin. That is the depth of what the 1968's Jefferson Nickel represents at its highest level, at its rarest and most perfect expression. It is not merely a financial instrument or a collector's trophy. It is a convergence, a point where history and artistry and rarity and human emotion all come together in a single small object that fits in the palm of your hand and contains within it a kind of compressed significance that no other format, no painting, no document, no photograph, can quite replicate. In the same way, because a coin is democratic in a way that other historical artifacts are not. It was made for everyone. It was made to circulate, to be touched by every kind of hand, to pass through every kind of life, to exist in the pockets of the powerful and the poor alike. And when a coin like the 1968's Jefferson Nickel in its finest form survives that intended journey of circulation and emerges on the other side still perfect, still flawless, still bearing every detail of its original strike as fresh and sharp as the moment it left the press, that survival feels like something more than luck. It feels like destiny. Like this particular coin was always meant to outlast its era and carry the memory of 1968 forward into a future where its value would finally be recognized and celebrated at the level it deserves. $93 million. That is where the story ends and where your own story might begin, because somewhere out there, in the vast, unexamined landscape of American coin collections in estate drawers and forgotten rolls and dusty old boxes, there are 1968's Jefferson Nickels that have not yet been seen by professional eyes, that have not yet been graded, that have not yet been identified for what they truly are, and any one of them could be the next great find, the next life-changing discovery, the next moment where An ordinary person holds an extraordinary object and realizes with dawning, breathtaking, almost terrifying clarity that what they are holding is not just a coin. It is a future, it is a transformation, it is 93 million reasons to look a little more carefully at every 5-cent piece that passes through your hands from this day forward. This has been Rare Coin Finder, and we hope that today's journey has changed the way you see the world of coins forever, because the greatest treasures are not always locked away in museums or hidden behind velvet ropes. Sometimes they are right in front of you, small and quiet and patient, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the curiosity and the courage to recognize them for what they truly are.